So good day everyone. My name is Jerome A. Robiado, and today I'll be discussing about the different theories under the focus on learning in a cognitive perspective. So it includes the Gestalt Psychology, second is the information processing theory, third is the Gagne conditioning learning, fourth is the Ausubel's meaningful verbal learning, or what we call the subsumption theory. And fifth is the Brunner's constructivist theory. So before we discussed the different theories that focus on the learner. So right now we will discuss first the Gestalt psychology. Okay, let's see. So, Gestalt psychology served as the foundation of the cognitive perspective to learning. So, it opposed the external and mechanistic focus of behaviorism. It considered the mental processes of the perception. So, when we say the cognitive perspective, no, it is more widely held than the behavioral perspective. So it includes the mental constructs such as the traits, beliefs, memories, motivations, emotions. And now we see an advanced organizer here under the Gestalt psychology. So we have the Gestalt principle. First, we have the law of proximity. Second is the law of closure. Third is the law of continuation, good continuation. Fourth is the law of good pregnancy. And the last one is the law of figure or ground. We also have the insight learning and the life space. Under that is the inner forces and the outer forces. So, Gestalt theory was the initial cognitive response to behaviorism, like what I have said. It emphasized the importance of sensory holes and the dynamic nature of visual perception. So, ibig sabihin daw po na ang Gestalt theory ay ang pag-uugali na hindi maaring maunawaan ang mga tuntunin ng mga maliliit na bahagi nito dahil ang buo ay mas malaki, no? Or mas lamang kaysa sa kabuuan ng mga bahagi nito. So, ibig sabihin, mas maiintindihan ng bata or ni learner kapag nakikita niya muna ng buo ang isang bagay or as a whole. Bago niya matiyak ang mga parte nito ay kabilang sa kabuuan ng bagay. No? Kaya sinabi na kabuuan or as a whole. The term gestalt means a form or configuration. Yan. Psychologists Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Kafka studied perception and concluded that perceivers or the learners are not passive but rather active. No? So they suggested that learners do not just collect information as is, but they actively process and restructure data in order to understand it. So simply we say that the learner, they are not passive but rather active. Now let's move on to the Gestalt principles. So first we have the law of proximity. So the elements that are closer together will be perceived as a coherent object. When objects we are perceiving are near each other, we perceive them as belonging together. Ibig sabihin na ang law of proximity ay ang batas na ito ay nagtataglay ng idea na ang mga bagay na malapit ng ugnayan or ang ugnayan sa isa't isa ay magkakasama. So we perceive them as belonging together. Next is the law of similarity. Elements that look like similar but similar will be perceived as part of the same form. Pag sinabi naman po nating law of similarity, ang batas daw na ito ay nakabitin or nakaangkla sa isang idea na ang mga kaugnay or katulad ng mga bagay ay magkasama. So binibigyan din ng batas na ito na ang mga bagay ay itinuturing na may kaugnayan sa isa't isa. Okay? So we link similar elements together. Like for example, this of the picture here, items that are similar tend to be grouped together. No, makikita po natin, the image above, most people see vertical columns of circles and squares. Next is the law of closure. Ano po ba ito? We tend to fill the gaps or close the figures we perceive. Ibig sabihin ng law of closure naman ay ang ating isip daw po ay may kaugalian na punan ang mga puwang o gaps, mga nawawalang bahagi ng ilang mga figures. Okay, so law of closure. Objects grouped together are seen as a whole. We tend to ignore and complete contour lines. In the image above, there are no triangles or circles, but our minds fill in the missing information to create a familiar shapes and images. So yun po yung law of closure, no? Next, we have the law of good continuation. Individuals have the tendency to continue contours whenever the elements of the pattern establish an implied direction. Ibig sabihin po ay ang pagkakakonekta ng ideas or different ideas upang bumuo sila ng tuloy-tuloy na pattern, no? Para makabuo sila ng isang meaning or kahulugan. So continuity, the word from itself, to maintain order, so the brain will carry on any visual patterns. So also continuation happens when the viewer's eye moves, whether smoothly or disjointly, through an object into another. Next, we have the law of good pregnance. Pag sinabi po nating law of good pregnance, the stimulus will be organized into as good as figure as possible. Meaning is, this law shows that our eyes can simply can simplify complex shapes into simple shapes. So yun po yung law of good pregnance. So pregnance means a good figure. The law of pregnance is sometimes referred to as the law of good figure or the law of simplicity. Yan. Next, we have the law of figure or ground. So we tend to pay attention and perceive things in the foreground first. Viewers will perceive an object or figure and a surface or ground even in shapes are grouped together. So ibig sabihin daw po ng figure, a law of figure or ground is, this law examines how the eye can separate shapes in a design from the background of that design. No, nakikita natin siya agad, na-identify natin siya agad. Gestalt Psychology adheres to the idea of learning taking place by discovery of insight. So ano po ba itong insight na to? The idea of insight learning was first developed by Wolfgang Kohler, in which he described experiments with apes where the apes could use boxes and sticks as tools to solve problems. So kapag sinabi po nating insight learning, no, it is an immediate and or a clear learning, clear understanding that takes place without over a trial and error testing. Insight learning occurs in a human learning when people recognize relationships and it may help them to solve new problems. So katulad po ng picture dito is pinapakita dito na yung experiment ni Wolfgang Kohler is dun sa mga apes, he uses the boxes and sticks to solve problems or as a tool to solve problems. Gestalt Principles and the Teaching Learning Process. So according to Kurt Lewin, expounded on Gestalt Psychology, his theory focuses on life space. Ayan, ano ba itong tinatawag nating life space? So he said an individual has inner and outer forces. Pag sinabi po nating inner forces, this include his own motivation, attitudes, feelings, emotions, beliefs. Ayan. And ang outer forces naman po may include the attitude and behavior of the teacher and classmates. So that is how explain what is Gestalt psychology is. So the contact experience between teachers and students is given value and authentic meaning based on sharing ideas and affections. So, yun po ang napapaloob doon sa Gestalt Principles and the Teaching and Learning Process. So, I hope meron po kayong natutunan and nalaman tungkol sa Gestalt Psychology and kasama na rin yung mga Gestalt principles na pwede nating i-apply sa ating teaching and learning. So, sa susunod pong video ko ay aking i-discuss about the information processing theory.